Okay, so let's get into this. So, like I said, this is the kind of thing that I talk about in The Creative Bassist, which is currently on sale if the sale finishes this weekend. So, in terms of creating things like riffs and also general bass lines, to be honest, there's two main things that I think that people really need to take notice of. And it's not scales or arpeggios, even though they can come into play later on. The two main things that I think people really need to pay attention to are rhythm. That's the one that I thought you'd all think, oh yes, okay, yeah, rhythm, we know about rhythm. But intervals. And I'll tell you why. Well, let's look at rhythm first. Well, rhythm, when you look at rhythms in a riff or a bass line, that's pretty much the washing line. You know, the pegs on a washing line, that's pretty much the pegs that you hang the clothes on, right? So if you think of the notes, that's kind of like a pair of underpants, or some jeans, stick them on the pegs, right? That's kind of the grid that you work to. And I don't know if it's Edgar Varese. I know Frank Zappa talked about that. I think he got that quote from Varese, talking about the washing line and putting things on pegs. And I think that's a brilliant way of visualizing how rhythm works, in music. You're attaching the notes to the rhythms. Now, and a lot of people would, I know the Jeff Berlins of this world will say, no, melody, the notes come first. And it's like, yes, the notes are the things that you hear, but they're nothing without rhythm. It's rhythm that puts pitch into a 4D sound space, So rhythm is one of the first things to address. Now, I'm not going to go too far into rhythm here. I'm going to get more into the interval thing, but you can take a rhythm, any rhythm, from any kind of bass line, and then just reshape it to create another riff. Rhythm is one of the main things that you'll develop in your musical vocabulary. Okay? So everybody has a bit of a musical personality. So all the music that you've listened to, you listen to songs, you listen to riffs, you listen to this, that, and the other. You will get a kind of musical personality from the melodies, but a lot of it's the rhythm. If you think about speech, how you have a conversation, the phrasing of it, the way that you talk, the rhythm of it. As I'm speaking now, if I'm to just put a click to that, okay? As I'm speaking, the way that I'm, the way that I'm talking, the rhythms that you're hearing, I'm attaching words and the pitches of the speech to those rhythms. The rhythm gives it the phrasing. Okay, that's what gives it the. That's how you present it. It's the presentation of it, and just as with speech, how you speak to your parents, you learn from your peer group. You sit there, you have conversations. You might like a certain stand-up comedian or a certain program on TV. A lot of these influencers, a lot of these things that you hear, they influence your speech patterns, your delivery of something. Like listening to a comedian, you would, if you're going to tell a joke, you're going to develop a certain amount of delivery from listening to those. It's no coincidence that when you talk to someone and then you listen to the parents or people from that area, you hear the same kind of rhythms, you hear the same kind of phrasing. So rhythm in music is exactly the same thing. So, as an example, so if you're the kind of person that's learned, so let's just take an example of a kind of riff kind of pattern. You might have a riff that goes. So there we've got this bam bam ba-dam dam bam bam ba-dam bam bam bam. Okay? Now if you listen to a lot of things like that, like kind of funk things and disco things, you're naturally going to have a feel for that kind of rhythm. So when you come to create something yourself, it's probably going to have the kind of rhythms that you hear in the songs that you have either learned or you just listen to. It doesn't even have to be the learning of it. If that's the kind of thing you listen to, that's the kind of thing that you're going to assimilate, the stuff that you're going to digest. Just as if you're more into metal or maybe even real thrash metal and stuff, the stuff that you're going to regurgitate is going to be more straight kind of, 8th notes, 16th notes, those kind of rhythms. It's all going to be more ba 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 ba. Even if there's syncopation involved, it's going to be more ba 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 bum ba bum bum ba 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 bum bum. Less likely to get that bam bam, those offbeat 16th notes. So that's just an example. But the kind of things that you listen to are going to be the kind of things that you then play, and it's listening to the rhythms. It's the rhythms that you take on board. Like there's a friend of mine who plays bass, and I know the kind of background he's got. It's very much Beatles and those kind of bands, and a lot of the bass lines that he'll come up with are going to have that, that kind of rhythm, that kind of move. Bang, bang, ba-da-ba-dum, bum. There's a certain vocabulary that you learn rhythmically. Yes, you get a melodic vocabulary, but you also get a harmonic and a melodic vocabulary. But rhythm is what we're looking at. So you can take something like a rhythm that you've heard in a different song, and then you can just change the notes in there. Or take a fragment. So let's think of earlier on we were playing, let's turn it up. So if we were to just take the first few notes, that kind of thing. Oh, the light's gone off behind me. Oh, damn it. So, bum, bum, ba, bum, 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 ba, bum. So remember, don't worry too much about the melody. We're thinking more about the rhythm. So we've got that dum dum da dum dum da bum bum ba bum. So just on one note, we've got. So just taking something like that. That's just the rhythm, I know it's not. We've just taken the rhythm and then just changed the notes. You could even take it, mess around with it. It's going to sound a little bit too much of a rip-off if you keep it that close. But, we've just taken the rhythm and then we've changed the notes. But then you can start to take notes out. Start breaking up the rhythm. So instead of dum dum da dum dum da dum, you could have dum dum da dum 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 da dum, or dum 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 dum. It's a different rhythm now, but it started with that seed, just taking a few of the rhythms out. So really, like I said, I'm not going to touch too much on the rhythm here because it's a pretty big subject. But the thing I'm just trying to get across here is that you build up a kind of vocabulary of rhythms, and it's based on what you listen to. So for a lot of you, coming up with a rhythm will probably be pretty easy because you will already have a bit of a musical vocabulary yourselves. So if I just said, come up with a rhythm, just create a rhythm. A 1-bar rhythm. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you just come up with something. Ba bum, bum, ba da dum. Let's say we don't swing it. Da dun, da 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 dun. A 2-bar rhythm. Da dun, 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 da da dun. Ba dum, bum, bum, bum. It's pretty easy to improvise a rhythm, So in the Creative Bassist course, we actually work on rhythmic grids and actually creating 1-bar, 2-bar, 4-bar, 8-bar rhythms, taking smaller fragments, building that up. But I'm guessing that most of you are going to have a little bit of an idea when it comes to the rhythm. But by taking the rhythm out and then just focusing on it, just as rhythm, away from the melody, away from all those notes, like I did there with the, just keeping that bum bum ba bum bum ba bum bum ba bum. That was taken from, and I know it's a pretty basic example, but if you just take the rhythm out and then just start taking fragments from it, messing around, it's a really good exercise to try. You know, just breaking it down, extracting the rhythm, just playing around with the rhythm, and then just expanding from there. You know, just on a single note, and then you can start to bring the other notes in. So that's the rhythm. So really, we're going to be looking at taking a rhythm or fragments of a rhythm and then attaching those notes to it. Remember what I said, it's like a washing line with pegs on. You're just attaching those notes onto the pegs. That's it. And to be honest, when you're coming up with things like riffs, the more simple, the better. You know, you think of some of the most famous riffs, you know. I mean, there is nothing to it, but the more simple it is, the more of a hook you're usually going to have. You don't want to overcomplicate things. So that's the rhythm part of it. Now, let's look at the actual melodic part of this. Now, I know, you know, in terms of the musical elements, we're really going to have rhythm, melody, and harmony. Now, I'm going to take harmony out of the equation for now, and we're just going to get really, 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 really simple and look at intervals. Now, what are intervals? Well, I'm not going to get too theory-based here. An interval is just a building block of music. It's like a letter or a word, okay? You take intervals, they're just distances of musical, the distances of music. So it's a musical measurement. So if I go C to E, that's a third. If I go C to D, that's a second. Don't worry about what they are yet, but C to G, that's a fifth. C to B, that's a seventh. Okay, so it's just two notes. It's one note to another, okay, at its core. Intervals are the building blocks of music. Absolutely everything that you see, see here in music is based on a combination of intervals. So chords, a chord like C major, that's a combination of intervals. It's two stacked thirds. Again, don't worry about what they are for now. It's two stacked thirds, a major third and a minor third, or you can look at it as from one note, major third, and then a perfect fifth. We've got a combination of them. The combination of those intervals, that's what gives it that sound, as we'll see in a sec. So by looking at intervals and how they work and how they, most importantly, sound, that is how you're going to learn more about creating music. So even the craziest serial music, you know, stuff where you've got like, you know, like really obtuse kind of weird stuff, it's still based on intervals. So intervals are what give the flavor to the music, okay? So, like I said, I'm not going to get too theory-based here. You know, you can see any of my YouTube channels, YouTube videos on intervals and arpeggios and all that kind of stuff, and I really break it down in terms of the theory. But what we're really looking at here is the actual sound of it. That's the most important part. And somebody earlier on was asking about ear training. Well, intervals are one of the key elements of ear training. You really want to be able to hear intervals, both harmonically and melodically. So, let's take that rhythm that we were just talking about. So, what was the rhythm that we came up with? So, bum, bum, ba-dum, bum, bum, bum. Okay, so, bum. Well, we'll do it on a C. It's just a single bar. So, on a single note, you know, it's a riff in itself. It's a bass line. You know, probably work if you got a chat. Bum bum chicken, bum chink, bum ba chink. Ignore those notes. Kind of works. But we can add notes into there. And this is where we're going to start looking at the intervals. Now, I'm not going to specify the harmony yet, because that would influence what the notes are. What we're just going to look at is adding some notes, and we're going to add intervals. So the first note that we often think of in terms of intervals as bass lines, the one that you see all the time, the most common one, is the perfect fifth, right? Again, don't worry about the terminology. it's basically working up through a major scale, 5 notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so if you take a C major scale, C, D, E, F, G, the 5th note, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's a G. So C to G, that's that 5th. Okay, and you'll know that sound. You get the kind of good old root 5th. Wherever it is. Okay, very, very common interval. So let's try adding that into our rhythm. So okay, so we've got a bit of a note in there. I could play it up above as well. I could play the G up here. So. Fifths are pretty neutral intervals, the perfect fifth. It's pretty neutral. It's the next note along in the harmonic series from the root. And it doesn't really have much quality. It has no major or minor quality. It's neutral. You can use it anywhere, okay? As long as there's no flat fives or sharp fives in the chord. But the fifth, you know, that's why we get them so much in bass lines. And it leads nicely back to the root note. So, you know, you get that nice authentic cadence. Fifth to the root, C, G, C. It leads back to the root. So we're actually making a little bit of a journey. We're going somewhere. We're coming back. So, you know, fifth works kind of nice. So, you know, even if we were working that rhythm through a chord progression. You know, we still use it. And like I said, I'm not looking at the chords yet. You know, that can come later. We're just looking at what the sound of these are on their own. So after the fifth there, what else could we look at? Well, we could look at the third. Now, this is a really important one because this is the thing that makes a chord major or minor. So regardless of whether you've covered intervals or anything like that, don't worry about it because I'm going to show you the two intervals. So if we're on a C there, 3rd fret of the A string, and I want to play a major third, that's going to be the E at the 2nd fret of the D string. So remember what I said? You work up through the major scale, C, D, E. That's the major third. Okay, 1, 2, 3. So we've got that pattern. You can play it anywhere. Just get used to that pattern, that little 2nd finger to 1st finger kind of thing. That's the major third. That's what gives the C major chord its major quality. We've got the 5th in there and the 3rd. So again, really, really important interval to know. What's a minor third? Well, a minor interval is a major third, a major interval with the top note taken down a half step, taken down a fret. So if that's the major third to the E, then we can play the minor third there at the 1st fret of the D string. And don't be conned by, watching YouTube videos. Minor intervals are not created from minor scales, okay? Minor intervals exist totally separately from minor scales, okay? So it's any minor interval is just a major interval with the top note taken down a half step, okay? Because it causes confusion. If you think of minor intervals as being from a minor scale, you'll start looking at the minor second and thinking, hold on, why is there a major second in a minor scale? Ignore all that. It's just a major interval with the top note taken down a half step. So we've now got a major third and a minor third. So let's try adding that to our little rhythm. So we had, that was with the G there. Let's try adding an E in there. So. Okay, can you hear how that sounds pretty happy? It's because of the major third in there. Forget the chord. You know, we've not got any chords playing. I've purposely done this without backing tracks. You just want to hear what they sound like away from the harmony. So there I'm playing the 3rd and the 5th. So I'm playing the root. So C, E, and then down to that G. Oh, we've got this nice little... let's change it to the minor third. Let's see what happens. So. Here it's a lot darker sounding. It doesn't have that lovely major sound anymore. We've got that dark minor sound now. There's no chord playing. This isn't to do with the chord that's in effect. We're not hearing a chord. We're implying a chord, but it's melodically. We're hearing it melodically. We're hearing the intervals. Okay? And you could do, you don't have to put that fifth in there. It's darker. So that's the third. Okay? So, we've got a fifth, we've got a major third and a minor third. Now, this is where we start drifting into the harmony side of it, because then you can start thinking, okay, well, what would be the chord that we would be playing over? Or if you're in a band situation and someone says, okay, I'm going to be playing, a guitarist maybe says, okay, well, this is a D major chord followed by a, A minor or something like that. Well, this is how you know what to play, because you need to know what the notes of those chords are. So if a guitarist says this is going to be D major, you need to know that it's D, F sharp, and A. Even if you don't know what the actual notes are, you need to know the arpeggio as a pattern at the very least. And knowing that it's the root note, it's the major third, and the perfect fifth. And then, hey presto, you're ready to go. But one of the things that I hear a lot of people say is, well, I've learned the arpeggios. I know what the arpeggios are. I know what the chord tones are. I know what these scales are, but I just don't know how to apply it. Well, that's because learning an arpeggio and learning a scale does not equal creating music. It's just a palette of notes. It's like saying, okay, well, there's a palette with a bunch of paint on it, and then saying, okay, well, how come I'm not painting a painting? Why am I not Leonardo da Vinci? I've got the same colours. Well, that's not what the arpeggios and the scales are. There's no music in there until you actually create it. So you need to know what those sounds are and how to use them. And that's where using them separately, away from the actual arpeggio itself, can come into play. So instead of actually using, an arpeggio and thinking, okay, I know the arpeggio, and then everything sounding like that, or because that's basically what happens if you just learn the arpeggio. But if you know that a fifth is in the arpeggio, well, you're using the notes of the arpeggio there. Knowing the individual intervals in there and what they sound like when you apply them, that's everything, okay? It's not enough to just know the arpeggio. You gotta know what all those notes sound like when you apply them. And if you do that, you will start developing vocabulary. And it's not enough to just practice them like this as well. You also want to hear how other people use them. So when you're actually learning a bass line, if you see, that's a bass line you might learn. Well, you can look at it and think, okay, well, the rhythm is bum ba dum ba dum bum bum, and you think, okay, root, fifth, and octave. Oh, so the root, fifth octave sounds like that. You assimilate that into your vocabulary, and now you can use that anywhere you want. Moving it around, just messing around with it. But it's all about learning what these intervals sound like. Like I said, they're the building blocks of music. Learning a major scale, it's not going to do anything. But what you need to do is learn how those notes are used, how other people use them, how composers use them. Classical music, how death metal players use them, or more importantly, intervals. And I'll get to that in a sec. So, that's the basic notes of, like I said, of a major triad. So a major triad would be root, major third, and perfect fifth. We've just learned those intervals. So now when you play that arpeggio, you should be able to see those intervals in there. C to E and C to G. And also, the actual construction of it is a major third interval and then a minor third interval. That's actually how these things are constructed. C to E is a major third, E to G, it's a minor third. We're stacking thirds, but don't worry too much about that for now. Just measure them from the root notes. C to E, major third, C to G, perfect fifth. Those two intervals. Minor arpeggio, C to E flat, minor third, and again, the perfect fifth. They both got a perfect fifth in there. You're looking at everything as intervals. What is the intervallic construction of them? Because if you know what the intervals are, you know how they sound, and you can use them individually, well, it means that all of a sudden, no matter what weird scale you've got, if you know what the intervals are in there and you're used to using them individually and in combination, it means you're going to be more musical, right? So there's a C minor arpeggio as well, which you could also play like this. So I just played it 3rd fret A string, 1st and 5th frets on the D string. That's one way of playing it. And 3rd fret, 6th fret on the A string, and then 5th fret on the D string. So that's another way of playing it. There's a bunch of different ways of playing it. You could also start on the 4th finger. So you can start 4th finger, 2nd finger, or 3rd finger, and 1st finger. It's always worth learning 3 different versions of each of these arpeggios. But at the end of the day, the most important thing here is knowing what those intervals are in there. Okay? So, we've got those arpeggios, which means now, if we were to play something like this, we know that that is a minor arpeggio. We know that the chord in effect there is a minor chord. So if you're playing it in a band, if you've made up that riff and you're like, oh man, I need, you're talking to the guitarist. Oh, can you play a chord over this? Well, what do I need to play? Now you know, C minor. That'll work. Okay, it's got that minor arpeggio in there. So whenever you see chords on a chord chart, if you know the arpeggios, you can start using the notes from those arpeggios to actually create a bass line. So, next up, let's add another note in there, because we've played around with the roots and the thirds and the fifths. You know, we know that the major third sounds a little bit happy. We know that the minor third sounds a little bit darker and a little bit sadder. The fifth's very neutral. But there's another note that's quite close to this root note that is used in so many riffs, including one that I just played a little bit earlier. And that's the 7th, right? So, loads of rock songs are going to have a minor 7th in them. It's going to be... Nearly played the A-Team theme there. So, let's have a look at the 7th, what it is. So, if I was to play a major scale on C, D, E, F, G, A, B, then we're back to C, work up through them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Got that B there at the 4th fret of the G string. C to B. It's not just B, right? That's a scale degree. An interval is a note to the next note. So C to B. So it's not just B, it's C to B. That is the interval, okay? So have a look at that. It's got a little bit of a weird look to it in terms of the actual fretboard pattern there. We've got the 3rd fret on the A string and the 4th fret on the G string. And it sounds pretty strange as well. But that is actually a very nice bittersweet interval when played in context, because it's part of the nice C major 7. So if I play that B, then actually put it in context with the actual arpeggio, listen to how it sounds quite nice. Play it on its own, got that weird angular jump, but it suddenly changes that major arpeggio from just that basic, bum 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 bum, to this nice bum 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 bum. So that's the major 7th, and remember what I said about the major about major intervals and minor intervals. To make a minor interval, you just drop that top note down a half step. So a minor 7th is going to be the B flat. But as with the other intervals, you don't just have to play them in ascent. We don't just have to play the 5th up here. We can play it below. We don't have to play the major 3rd up here. We could play it below. Same thing with the 7th. So we can take that B and take it down here to the 2nd fret on the A string. So that's pretty nice, isn't it? We've got this note that's 1 fret below the root note. and it has that sound. It has a kind of bit, in context, with a major 7 chord, it's got this kind of bittersweet sound. It doesn't always have to sound that, because you could literally go, you know, that's still a major 7th. Or a, you know, a harmonic minor. You know, context is everything with this. But then for the minor 7th, we take that note, that B flat, down the octave, we've got this cool, hard-hitting 7th, which is just a whole step down below the root note. So if I'm up here, so you can hear it a little bit better up here, you know, it's just, there's a C, 10th fret of the D string, down to that B flat at the 8th fret. So you'll know it from if you've learned a minor pentatonic scale. And it's just there in pretty much every kind of rock riff you can imagine. So let's now try adding that minor 7th into that rhythm that we had. So the rhythm was bam bam ba-dam bum bam bam. So what can we do? So we originally had the. So we got another riff. Now let's put the 5th in there as well. Or 5th and then the 7th. See, easy. We got the rhythm. The rhythm exists separate from all of this. And we're just learning how these intervals sound and then just popping them in there. Remember, at no point have I put a backing track on. We're not listening to the chords or anything like that. You can do this away from that. You just get used to what intervals sound like. Worry about all that stuff after. And also, well, on a riff, you could have a guitarist play that with you. You got a riff. It's not the most, you know, creative thing ever, you know, but it's a riff, you know. Okay, so that's the minor 7th. But what happens if we use the major 7th? Remember, up there it was very angular. Let's have a listen to that again, but using the major 7th. All of a sudden, it loses that hard-hitting rock sound. So if I play it up here. So it's a little bit like with the major 3rd, when it's just a lot more bright. You know, the difference between the major and minor 3rds. Same thing with the 7th. So if I now incorporate the 5th. And the 5th first. Up here, just so you can hear it a little bit better. Totally different kind of feel to. Here, that's just totally different. It's because of the intervals. Like I said, intervals are the building blocks of music. It's those little musical bricks that give music the flavor. Okay, that's where all the flavors come from. And if you think about something like a well, we looked at it with the arpeggio, okay? So a major arpeggio, root, major 3rd, perfect 5th, okay? The reason an arpeggio and a chord sound like that is only because of the intervals in there. It's the sum total of the intervals in there. It's like a recipe. Okay, what do we have? We've got some paprika, and we've got this, we've got a bit of salt, we've got this. Well, with this, we've got the root note, we've got the major 3rd, we've got the perfect 5th. Cook me up a major arpeggio, you know. That's what we've got. It's built from those intervals. So the more intervals you learn, you know, visually, by note, what they sound like, most importantly, you know, it's pointless learning intervals if you don't know what they sound like. You're going to get used to the sound of them. So when you start trying to create something, you might be thinking, ugh, don't know about that. Sounds a bit too happy for me. You know, if you were just randomly putting your fingers somewhere. But then you think, okay, can't use a major 7th there. Let's use that minor 7th. all of a sudden you're in rock territory. And obviously, you will learn all of this kind of thing anyway, just from learning songs. Earlier on, we were playing. You know, if you know what the intervals are in there, and even if you don't know the names, you know, you just know what they look like, you know, the actual frets that you're moving to. You know, you got that minor third in there, you got that minor seventh in there, you got the fifth. There's a fourth in there as well. There's that minor seventh coming back. All the intervals that we've just looked at are in there. That riff sounds like it does because of those. Forget the scale. It's pointless looking at something like Black Knight and thinking, oh, it sounds like that because it's using a pentatonic scale, a minor pentatonic. No, it sounds like that because it's got a minor third in it, it's got a minor seventh in it, it's got those building blocks in it. That's what gives it the sound. If you look at things more from an interval perspective than you do a scale perspective, you know, there's too many notes in a scale. You know, it's a palette, yes, but that palette is just a combination of intervals. You know, so that's the seventh. Okay, so we can add that in. So we've now got a little bit of a. And you just improvise around it. You know, whatever you want to do. You just play around with the rhythm a little bit. You can start adding a few little notes in there. So just like I did there. So you're just playing around with those notes. I'm only using the intervals that we've covered so far. Now, when it comes to the other intervals, yes, they've all got a flavour. In fact, a lot of them have got even more flavour than these ones. But there's a little bit of a skill that comes into play when you're actually trying to introduce them into your playing. Okay, you can't just think, oh, there's a sixth, I'm just going to use a sixth. There's a fourth, especially a fourth. You can't just think, oh yeah, well I can just land on a fourth because it's in the major scale. Because that's what sometimes happens. People say, if you learn the major scale and then, you know, that's all the notes that people use in tonal Western music. You can start using it. That's all fine until you start playing a fourth over in a major chord. You know, so if you play that and then you stick that over it, it's just going to sound awful. So there's a bit of a knack to doing this. So one way of introducing this is to think of what I generally call melodic devices, where you start to introduce them around a major or minor chord, or a major or minor seventh, whatever it is, the actual arpeggio. So instead of thinking, okay, well, I'm going to just start putting seconds in or, you know, making bass lines with sixths, think of a chord, you know, build it from a chord first and foremost. So this is where the harmony thing starts to come into play. So if you think, okay, well, I'm going to do this over a minor chord, okay? You know, we were looking at that minor seventh in there. Pretty cool little sound, you know. Instead of just thinking of that minor seventh arpeggio, which, let's just look at that first. A minor seventh is a minor triad with that minor seventh on the top. C, E flat, G, B flat. Root, minor third, perfect fifth, then that minor seventh. So we've already covered those intervals. You should know what they are by now. So we've got third fret and sixth fret on the A string, fifth fret on the D string, and third fret up on the G string. Attach the octave to the top. Try and learn it, you know, all the notes of it in that area. Look around. You know, try learning it around the instrument. But then, in order to bring a few more notes into play, let's base it around this arpeggio. So what you can do is just join them up, right? So that would be passing notes. So what we could do is, let's say we want to go from the C up to the E flat, that minor third, we could just put a D in there. I'm just joining the notes up. The good thing about this is if that chord is a minor 7 or a minor, we're not going to be lingering on that second in there, which is going to create a tension. It's going to do that. But in passing, it's fine. So we're accenting the root note, we're accenting the third, those are the two notes of the chord, but we're putting this as a transition in the middle. You can do the same thing with the fourth. So the F there. So I could play the E flat, F, G. So again. And then you could try maybe putting the minor sixth in there, which would be there. It's an A flat at the sixth fret of the D string. So you can use them as passing notes, or you can also use them as neighbour notes. So when you use a neighbour note, you play a note, let's say a C, move up to the next note, and back. And you'll see that a lot. You know, that's a very common fill. All that is root, fifth, octave, up to the second, and down. It's a nice little fill. It's a neighbour note, okay? So it works because the chord might be C major, whoops, and we've got that second in there, or ninth, okay? So one thing you can practice is taking something like a minor seventh arpeggio and then just trying neighbour notes on each one of them. So C to D and back to C, E flat to F and back to E flat, G to the A flat and back, and then B flat up to the C and back. You are including a chord tone there. And you can play them below as well. Which means then when you try putting them, let's say in a riff, it means you're thinking about the notes of the chord. You're thinking about the harmony. You're not going to go wrong. If you play just chord tones, you won't go wrong. You know, I mean, you've got to play the root note on the first beat if you want it to if you want it to work harmonically. Otherwise, it's going to be a slash chord or whatever. But if you play the root note and then you just play a fifth and then some kind of sixth above it, or the F below it, it's going to work because you're just using them in passing. So. Again, you can just start messing around. You know, that's the best thing to do. Just start trying things out. Sitting there, playing that up and down is not going to help in terms of, you know, creatively using this stuff. You really want to be looking at something like an arpeggio and then playing around the chord tones. That's the root and the flat seven, and then the fifth and the fourth there as a neighbour note. And you know, there's that fifth to the minor sixth. Remember what I said about the intervals? It's a minor sixth. It's got that sad sound to it. What happens if I use a major sixth? Again, it's got a much more uplifting sound. That's why you get that kind of... That's that major sixth. There's that fifth to the major sixth and up, okay? You get to learn what they sound like. That's the most important thing. Oh, major sixth, it sounds like that. In a minor context, it'd sound more like this. You get that Dorian sound. So again, context is everything, but there's a minor sixth, or there's the minor third up to the fourth and back. We're just creating neighbour notes around the chord tones. So then it's just down to you to actually learn what the intervals are. Just learn all of the intervals and then try messing around with them. In the creative bassist course that This is I'm drawing from in actually talking about this stuff, because there's several lessons devoted to this. Everything I've just talked about, I absolutely deep dive into in the course. So if you're into this stuff, the Creative Bassist course is the one to go for, and it's on sale until tomorrow. So grab that if you like all this stuff. But yeah, in the Creative Bassist, I talk about the intervals, we break them down. There's a bunch of riffs just using individual intervals. But the most important thing is for you to actually mess around with them. It's all well and good somebody saying, oh, here's a riff that makes use of them. But it actually makes more impact if you actually try playing around with them yourself. Find out what you like, find out, like if you're playing something like that, it's a nice little sound. If you came up with that, oh, there's a fifth, there's a sixth. Let's use that neighbour note thing that Mark was talking about. With whatever rhythm you want. Remember, at the start of this lesson, we were talking about rhythm. Get a rhythm, be it a rhythm from a song that you already know or just something. Bum, ba 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 bum, 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 ba 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 bum. Everybody can come up with a rhythm. So... and then just try making use of individual intervals. Certain ones have got real hardcore flavours. So a minor second sounds like this. That's got that real kind of exotic kind of sound. Depending on what you mix it with. So you get, a lot of you that might know modes might be thinking, oh, that's that Frisian sound. But forget modes, forget scales. Well, don't forget them completely. They do come into play eventually. But to begin with, intervals are where it's at. If you know what the intervals sound like, if you know what a minor second sounds like, and you've tried using it, it means that when you learn a scale that's got that kind of stuff in it, you think, yes, the Frisian. It has the minor second in it. It has the good old... you start seeing these things in everything that you learn, and it makes more sense because you will know how that interval sounds and how you can use it. So, there's that dark minor second. Okay? Diminished fifth. If you're into metal, it's all about intervals. Very rarely in thrash, death metal, and very heavier metal things do they actually pay any attention to traditional Western harmony. It's all about patterns, basically, about intervals. Really, it's just patterns. Guitarists come up with patterns that they like, but really what they're doing is using intervals. It's just that they're thinking of it just from a pattern perspective. But if you know all this stuff about the intervals that I'm talking about, well, it means you've got some labels for it. But essentially, when you're learning... Master of Puppets there, E to F, that's, there's that good old... It's that minor second, full-on metal. Then you've got the B, which is the perfect fifth that we already looked at. Then we've got the minor sixth, then the major sixth. It's just patterns, okay? But in effect, what you're doing when you learn those little patterns like that is you're learning intervals. Some intervals sound dark and hard. Some of them sound more pleasant and, bittersweet. You've got the good old... major seventh that we were talking about. So, that's pretty much all I'm going to talk about today. The only other thing left to say there is that you can also incorporate chromatics. So once you've learned what those intervals are, you can fill in the gaps between them. So if you learn, let's say, that a major scale is made up of a root, a major second, major third, perfect fifth, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, major sixth, major seventh, and you're using that as your kind of palette, well, chromatic notes just fill in the gaps in between. So you can... it's better coming down, but... So let's say that you're using a major arpeggio. You can start incorporating filling the gaps in between, let's say, that fourth and the fifth. Okay, so it's just filling in the gaps. But just as a kind of pathway with this, it's intervals first, learn what they sound like, start seeing them in everything that you play. Then you can learn your arpeggios and your scales, see what they're made up of, what the intervals are in there, because then you'll know how to use them a little bit better, you know, what they sound like, you know, because if you don't know what things sound like, it just means that you're playing randomly. You know, if you don't know what you're about to play when you play it or as you play it, then it's random. You know, you're just trying something out. But when you learn what all of this stuff sounds like, then it's not random. You know, so, you know, if I go, you know, when it drops down to that major third, I know what that sounds like. You know, before I play it, as I play it, I know what it is. That's your aim, to know what everything sounds like so that then you can just talk through the instrument. So intervals, chord tones, then scales come into play, because scales are just bridge the gap between the chord tones, and then the chromatics. All of that is covered in that Creative Bassist course. It's about 24 hours of video lessons that go. It's the best course I've ever done. But like I said, I released it the week before last, and it's on sale until tomorrow. So if you want to grab it at a discount, then it's there over at the Talking Bass store. So I've put a link, I think, in the description below this. So if you want to get it while it's hot, okay? There's 2 volumes to that. First volume is the one that's out right now. There's actually a pre-order, so you get the volume 2 as well. But I'll be doing volume 2 over this next couple of months and then releasing that as an add-on. And that's going to be melodic playing and soloing. So I'll be talking about the basics of solo improvisation. There's also a full jam pack, a load of jam tracks that I'm adding to that. So within the next couple of weeks, that's going to be released as well. So I'm kind of drip feeding that bit. But yeah, that's the Creative Bassist. So yeah, hopefully that's been interesting. Hopefully you've learned a little bit from all of that. I always worry when I do these kind of things because I'm just thinking, am I, you know, because I'm not looking at the actual comments. And, you know, there might be loads of you that know exactly what I was talking about already, and that, you know, you've not learned anything, but whatever. So, I've probably got a ton of comments here. So I'll start at the bottom. So I'll probably be around, what time is it now? So it's just 7:05. So I'll probably be around for another 10-15 minutes. If you've got any questions about any of the stuff that I've just been talking about. I can't believe my blue light went out. Now it's all dark. And like I said, I might start using this as the actual backdrop for the, you know, for the Friday lessons. New comments, right? Let's see what we got. Thanks, Mike. Good stuff for an old man beginner. 70s soul music like Teddy Pendergrass, etc. The bass lines have a lot of 16th note rests, lines and ties, very intricate. How do you memorize this? At the beginning of the lesson, I started talking about vocabulary and about how the kind of music that you listen to is a direct influence on the stuff that you actually kind of regurgitate, you know, the vocabulary that you gain. And it's the same kind of thing. A lot of that kind of syncopated 16th note stuff, the more of it you learn, the more patterns that you start to see all the time. The other thing I would say, right, is I have found that learning to read music, it kind of changed a lot of stuff for me in you know, in terms of memorizing things, because as much as a lot of people think that when you read music you don't memorize things, and that can be a problem. You know, there's been loads of times when I've been playing in a band where I've had to sight read it on stage, and then maybe done that gig quite a few times, and eventually you find it hard to get off the music. But one of the things that does happen is that you start to have a very organized and systemized way of looking at music, especially rhythmically. So when you learn to read music, especially when you learn to, you know, you get good enough to be able to sight read music, you have no time. If you're, let's say you're sight reading on stage, someone's giving you a part, could be anything, right? You have no time to work stuff out. You have to know exactly what that is. you basically have to get to a level where you read it like you would a book. Okay, when you read a book, you don't look at the actual words in there and think, right, I need to work out what this is. It's going to be a cat. The cat, at. You don't do any of that, do you? You know what they are. After a certain amount of time of doing it, it's just second nature, and you can basically read full sentences in one go. Well, that happens with music because you actually learn how rhythms, the patterns of rhythms, how it is so logical and mathematical in its structure. So you start to see patterns of 16th notes that recur all the time. The one that I used in that bass line that we were just looking at, just that very first bit, bam, bam. That's a dot and eighth note, 16th note, bam, 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 bam. It's quite a syncopated rhythm, really. That is so common in bass lines. You know, you see it so much in written music that you don't think about it. It's just, oh yeah, bam, bam. You know, if you've got your foot tapping, bam, bam. You know, the other one that's an expansion on that, dot and eighth note, 16th note, eighth note, rest, eighth note, which is this. You get it all the time. You start to see more and more patterns as you do that. So what happens is you kind of get this very ordered, you know, way of seeing things. And you actually get so that you can, if there's something that's quite complicated, that's not that common, you can actually break it down, maybe write it down or read it or whatever, and you'll remember it from what you've actually read or written. You know, you know the music, almost like you're visualizing the music in your head. Think about what would happen if you had to read some Shakespeare, right, and you had to memorize it. You had to learn some, you know, soliloquy or something like that. So let's say that you can't read and you have to work through it, and or you've just got to learn it by listening to somebody. Imagine how long it would take to actually learn it just from listening to them over and over. Now, you'd get it, that'd be fine. You'd get it fairly quick. But if you can read it straight away, that can actually help a lot, because then you can actually, you know, you read it and you have an understanding of it from reading it. You can visualize the words. If you didn't know what words looked like, it would be so much more difficult. I know that orally you can do these things, but what you're actually talking about is finding it hard to orally learn them. If you find them hard orally to learn, that's where possibly learning to read music can come into play. I mean, you know, it was a couple of years before I started reading when I was a kid. And I just learned everything that I did up to that point just from learning them on records. You know, I was talking earlier on about somebody wanted to develop their own. It says transcription. You know, transcribing, just learning bass lines is the best thing you can do. So that is insanely important. I'm not saying learn to read, don't do ear training. It's like you want to do it all. You know, you want to learn everything. And I think that just learning the kind of especially seeing syncopated rhythms, learning what they look like as rhythms, like, you know, 16th note rest, 16th note rest, that kind of thing. And then practicing those rhythms, which is what you've got to do if you're going to learn to read music. You know, you can't be making it up on the spot or learning it on the spot when you're actually playing in front of people. You've actually got to know what all of those rhythms are already. You know, there can't be any surprises. When you read a piece of music on stage, you have to know what every single thing on there sounds like before you do it. You've got to look at it and go, okay, that is this. Bum bum ba da dum dum ba da ba da ba dum bum 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 bum. You can't be standing there and going, oh god. It's got to be absolutely natural when you do it. So you can imagine if you can do that, it makes memorizing things actually a lot easier, just because you've already kind of done them before at some point. But anyway, you know, I digress. I think this is the first time I've seen you sitting. No. Have you not been to any of the live hangs before? I mean, I used to do them every week, you know, but I've just not done them for about 6 months. So, yeah, if you've never seen me do a live hang before, I mean, there's loads of them on the actual channel. If you just go to this, will be in a playlist called the Talking Bass Live Lounge. If you actually go to some of the other videos in that, you'll see hundreds of them where I'm just sat. If you're into it, if you're into seeing me being sat, you get a better idea of what I look like on the toilet. How does AI affect music positively or negatively? By heck, we're getting into some some different territory there. I don't really know. I'm really into AI as well. I'm a bit of a tech nerd. I don't know how much it can. I mean, yeah, I guess it can negatively impact it, but musicians are still going to be around. One thing AI can do is help you with transcribing things, that's for sure. Are you going to do live streams every Saturday? I feel like it is motivating. Okay. You're like a coach to get us going when we need inspiration to watch a game instead of practice. Oh, great. Yeah, I mean, I've started just watching some chess live streams. I've been playing a lot of chess recently. I've been... It does. As soon as I watch a live stream where I'm watching somebody, it doesn't have to be Magnus Carlsen or anything like that. Just anybody, and you see how things, you see a move, you see how somebody addresses a certain thing, middle game or something like that, and you think, oh man, and then you want to go and play. It's the same thing. Now I'm imagining Mark on the toilet with a bass. Yeah, like Frank Zappa. Well, I won't be here every night live. Moises. Yeah, that's one of the AI ones. I'll tell you what the best one is for transcription. It's called Riffs. I've got it on... I use it for, if I can't hear something. Riffs is like that's like a cheat code for it, because you put it in, you split it up into its individual parts, and, it's still not going to be like listening to the individual channels. Most of the time, it just sounds awful still. But, you can hear something. You can hear the notes. But the cool thing is, it tells you everything about it. You get the tempo. It changes the tempo as it moves. It knows what it's changing to. But most importantly, there's a keyboard at the side, and you can see what every single note is. So you could literally transcribe something by just clicking on each note and going, okay, that's a C, that's a B flat, that's an A flat. It tells you. So that's Riffs, but it's quite expensive for what it is. But I find it really useful. I bought it, and then I actually got an email from them not long after, asking if I wanted to use Riffs, and basically use advertise it on the channel and stuff. Which I've not actually replied to them, but I'd have got it free. I'd already paid for it, so they were a bit late on that one. But I might do a video on it. I'm not too bothered about them actually sponsoring me. I usually ignore all those emails. I get emails every day, like hundreds of them, from companies saying, oh, can you, we'll give you this and give you this if you put it on the channel. It's like, I don't really want to advertise vacuum cleaners on the channel. That is literally, I got one, a vacuum cleaner. Somebody, I can't remember what company it was. Like, oh, and it's always a round robin, it's the same thing that they've written to every other channel. There's probably I'm on a list probably of YouTube channels. There's probably anything over 400,000 subscribers or something, and they just send it out to everybody. So you just get stuff like vacuum cleaners and washing machines and all kinds of stuff. But every now and then there's something that's kind of cool. But I just ignore them, because I don't want to do any advertising on the channel for any of these things, because they hold you to ransom then. They'll say, because I answered a few of them back a few years ago, because someone offered me these really expensive headphones and says, oh, if we'll send you some headphones and you can talk about them on the channel. And then I was like, oh, that sounds nice, because they were really expensive headphones. And then they sent me back this email telling me about what I needed to do, saying it needs to be this many minutes on this many videos and this and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you just end up being a slave to all the blooming, these companies that are trying to send you this stuff. So I'm like, nah, forget it. So I don't bother. Can you imagine how bad that'd be? If halfway through one of the lessons on talking bass, all of a sudden I went, well, and just a little moment to mention our sponsors here, Electrolux, and, I start talking about just like washing machines and ovens. Yeah, Magnus Carlsen, who was just on Rogan. Yeah, that was great actually. I'd just been playing, and then I thought, has Joe Rogan been listening to me? Has he been monitoring my my chess? Because it was like so funny that I just started up playing chess again. I used to play it when I was a kid, but I've not bothered, and so I've just started up again, and then there he was. You could sell some t-shirts, hoodies in the store though. Yeah, I mean, you can do that on YouTube actually. There's a thing, isn't there? You can do the merchandise thing. But I'm always like, who the hell's going to buy a Talking Bass t-shirt? And one thing that I did learn from Scott, actually, from Scott Devine, is a little bit about the merch thing and about how much of a pain it can be to actually develop stuff. Like, he probably doesn't mind me mentioning this, but or maybe he does, I don't know. But when he started his one strap, I think it was the one strap that he did. So he had this strap, really good strap actually, very similar to the Levis Leathers ones. But I remember going out for a curry with him, and it was the day that he was supposed to be releasing the strap live on there. And he was telling me about how much of a pain it was to actually get it developed, because you had to have it manufactured in this country, then sent, and there was all these different countries that you had to do things to actually get it done, and then sent and then distributed. The whole thing, it was like, for a bass channel where you just do bass education, you've got to start thinking about distribution deals with different countries. It's like it becomes a real pain. So, because there were a few things that I was thinking about to do with basses and straps and all those kind of things, and I'm like, man, that sounds like too much hard work. I mean, t-shirts and that, there are a few companies, I think, where you can do it and they just take a cut or whatever. But I don't know, I'm always a bit like, who's going to buy a Talking Bass t-shirt? But if there's a call for it, if anybody wants Talking Bass t-shirts, then I'll do it. I'd be better off making some kind of funny t-shirt, wouldn't I? A bit like Danny Sapko's done. Have some stupid logo. Probably like OK or something, Everybody talks about when I go, OK? I don't do it as much now, but oh man, back in the day when I used to do the early videos, I'd be like going, okay, okay, and then whatever it was, some crazy tapping line, okay, and yeah, I said, or okay, South Park, but maybe I should put okay on a on a t-shirt. Let's have a look. Sorry if I've not answered the comments that were further up. I'm just looking at the ones that are here right now. So if anybody wants to ask a question that they asked earlier on, because there's just too many, I'm just like, I'll be whipping up and then getting, having to come all the way back down. Is double thumb really all about slow practice? Yes. Yes. And well, I'm not good at double thumb, right? It's like, disclaimer, I know I've done lessons on it and stuff, and I used to practice it more than I do now. If you don't practice it, you can really get out of practice with it. But I just never really have anything that I want to play with it. I mean, I did the old, whatever, classical thump thing. I can't remember it now. But I had a real issue with this when I first started trying to do it about 20 years ago. And it was that I was thinking that it was like normal slapping, and that I'd be playing that and then coming back up with the edge of the thumb. And it's not that at all. You can actually do, well, double thumbing is more like picking. It's more like playing with a plectrum. It's the same kind of action. The thing to do is, first of all, get down the rest stroke side of it. So if I'm playing a D here on the A string. So instead of bouncing, just get used to doing the downstroke. So the thumb comes to rest on the D string. That's your first thing right there. If you can get used to that, then you just let the edge of the nail, I've got terrible nails, but the edge of my thumb there, the edge of the thumbnail, sorry, just the sort of corner edge of it, that, you let that just catch it on the way back. So you go down and then slightly out. So it kind of catches that corner. And I found that really weird at first. And it just didn't work for me. I was like, what, the nail? And I think I tried doing it right down the middle of the nail, and I'm like, man, that hurts. But it's just a little bit on the edge. So if you get used to that, and then just very slowly just go. It's pointless trying it fast. Just get used to doing it slow. You know, just get used to doing that. And that's why I say, if I've got a pick here, it's a little bit, it's very much like going, it's pretty much the same thing. Okay, so there I'm playing D and then the C. So I just play simple things. Just get used to playing stuff that you would normally play, but with that double thumbing. Forget slap lines, because they don't necessarily work as well. You can do those kind of things, but you know, that and those kind of hammer-on-y kind of things. Oh, I told you I was bad. Get that kind of thing, or so you can kind of do. By doing like basically doing an open string, a hammer on, and then the upstroke. Oops, hold on, let's try it here. So that's that move, and I'm not really doing anything there. That's a Victor Wooten thing. So. The open string becomes a ghost note. Just that's a bit clattery. But see how there's not much movement going on at all. Look how little this hand's doing. But you gotta get that catch of that nail on it. Just playing on a single note can actually help with getting the action. As if you were doing that with a pick, just going like. No. And then you can. So bad. But I have no use for it. I very, very rarely ever do it because I've just never found anything that I've wanted to play that did that. It's just not a part of my vocabulary on the instrument. Earlier on when I was talking about vocabulary, double thumbing's not a part of it. I've never been a big Victor Wooten. I think he's one of the greatest bass players of all time in terms of technique and just his and as an icon and everything, and he's a wonderful human being and everything. He's just like a glowing, a shining light, in the bass community. But in terms of the stuff, and I love actually listening to some of the stuff that he does, but it's not the kind of thing I necessarily want to play, so I just don't bother. Charles Berthoud, on the other hand. Just as I was sort of like practicing all the Billy Sheehan and that kind of stuff when I was a kid, because that was the kind of thing that turned me on. Charles practiced all the Victor Wooten stuff, and he's an absolute virtuoso because of it, doing that kind of thing. If you've not seen the Charles Berthoud interview that I did, that's worth watching. I did that, what was it, last year? I think it was last year. Charles is really, really nice guy. And insanely talented. Right, hold on. Can you briefly repeat how to play bass notes with the guitar player playing chords? I'm not sure what you mean there. Can you briefly repeat how to play bass notes with a guitar player playing chords? Well, watch back through the video when I've done it, because that is actually what I've kind of talked about. So the thing that you would normally do, most people are just going to play the root note. So if it's like a on a C, or let's say it's a C major chord. So like you can. But you can add in the notes of the arpeggio. Not like that, but, learning the individual chord tones. But go back over the lesson that I've just done. It'll probably shine a light more on some of the things that you're wanting to know about. Is there some place we can see the back videos that you've already posted someplace? What you mean? There's stuff on YouTube. It's all there on YouTube. But if you go to talkingbass.net, go into the lesson map, and there's every lesson I've ever done in there, all systemized. That is worth mentioning. Any of you that don't realize YouTube, the YouTube channel is only a YouTube front for the website. So the main stuff that I do is all the website. I don't, like when people, like, if anybody says, what do you do? And somebody will say, oh, he's a YouTuber. No, I'm not a YouTuber at all. I've got a YouTube channel associated with Talking Bass, but it's Talking Bass. So if you go to the Talking Bass website, there's a forum, there's chat groups, there's all the courses, there's thousands and thousands of lessons on there that I've done. It's all in there. So if you go to talkingbass.net, look at the lesson map. That's got every single YouTube video I've ever done in there. There's all the interviews that I've done, so interviewed Tony Levin and, loads of massive names, in the interview bit. And then if you sign up to the free membership, you get into all of the other stuff in the back end, which is, and it's for free as well. You have to pay for courses if you want to do the courses, but all the forums and the ebook downloads and all that kind of stuff, that's all totally free. There's a lot of free stuff in there. I just assumed everybody knew that, but it's worth mentioning, I suppose, just in case you don't. I love hoodies. I would buy a Talking Bass hoodie. All right, then I'll have a look at Talking Bass hoodies. Let's see what I can come up with. Players YYZ like Scott did. I did a lesson on that before. Physical books would be cool. Right. I am going to be releasing physical versions of the Cyborg Bassist this year. I'm going to be doing it through Kindle Publishing, so I've got a bit of learning to do because I'm going to do it all myself. So I've got the 3 books out so far, so I'll be releasing those as physical copies. The only thing is, don't get mad at me when you won't be able to get them if you've already got for free if you've already got the ebook, because it'll be a totally separate thing because it'll be through Amazon. So I won't be just sending them out willy-nilly. And it costs a certain amount just to make each book as well. So, there'd be no point in doing it if I had to pay to do it. So, you won't be able to get them for free if you've already bought it. So, sorry about that to anybody that's already got the ebooks. But, I will be doing that later on. I'll also be releasing an album with the band that I'm doing with a few friends of mine. We've still got to come up with a band name. We've got all the material done. We're just finding it hard to actually come up with a band name for it. But and I will possibly even do a course on all the bass lines in all of the songs, because it's not crazy Mahavishnu orchestra stuff like Scott did. Mine's actually this one that we're doing is these songs have been in the pipeline for about 15 years. So it's standard pop rock kind of stuff. So that's going to be with vocals. It's a proper band. So that's we're going to release that about, I don't know when yet. I've still got to book the studio time, but because I've done some quite neat bass lines on them, I might do a course actually devoted to the course, to the bass lines, showing how I wrote the bass lines. Because there's some quite cool little things that I managed to do in there that I'm quite proud of, even if I do say so myself. San Diego Varsity Sports. There are many bass channels, but Talking Bass is my home base and favourite. Yes. Talk about recording yourself and how difficult but beneficial it is to see yourself. What, me, in terms of doing this? Well, in terms of recording yourself is one of the best bits of practice that you can actually do. Here's a little anecdote. When I was at music college doing my degree, so at Leeds College, and I had a bass teacher called Sean Hodgson, who every week he would give me a classical piece to learn. So we'd do it as a duet. Like the one that I did with Ariane Cap, the old... Well, every single week, he'd give me another Bach piece or an Elgar piece or whatever it was. And I'd have to learn either the top part or the bottom part, and he'd play the other part, and then the next week we'd play it as a duet. And then we'd switch parts, and then we'd do it the other way. It was basically a reading, he'd give it me written music, I'd have to sit there reading through it, getting it down. And it was difficult. And he really used to kick my ass in terms of technique and things like that, in terms of keeping your hands close to the... He used to put a book above my hand because he was going, no, you're bringing your fingers up too much, and he'd put this book above my fingers. But when I used to do that, to check how I was doing, I would record every single practice session that I was doing, and then I'd go over it, and then I'd try doing a performance of it. Once I got it down, once I got the notes under my fingers, I'd try and do a performance of it. If I couldn't get through it on the recording, I knew it wasn't good enough for the actual lesson. Because when you press record on something, there's a certain amount of pressure. You can sit there all day just playing, noodling around, and you might make a tiny scuff here and there, you might play everything perfect, but there's no pressure. As soon as you press record, as soon as that red light's on, man, you start making mistakes because the pressure's on. And I find that really, really useful. So what I used to do, this is terrible, don't do this, but what I used to do is we always used to go to the pub I think my lesson was on Thursday morning, about 9 o'clock. And we'd all go, me and all the musicians would go to the pub on Wednesday night. And so I'd get back fairly late, having had quite a bit to drink. So I'd get back, I'd put on the recording thing, and then I'd try playing it. And I knew if I could record it after having about 6 pints, I'd be okay for the next morning. And that's kind of how I judged everything. That kind of thing actually came into play when I later on started playing on cruise ships. But that's recording is really, really good for you. When I do the recording stuff for me, for Talking Bass, it has been really, really good because again, there's pressure on every single time you press the button. Especially when I learned that thingy. Oops, messes it up. Solfeggietto, which I played very badly there. When I learned that, and then had to play it, so I'd only spent a week learning, 12 days it was, learning that, on the live streams, and then it came to actually play it on the Friday lesson. Oh my God! It was like a pressed record on the video, and I've got to play the damn... I should have recorded it separate. I should have actually recorded it and mimed to it, but I never mimed to them. That's... some people do mime to things, when they do them on these videos. When you see people doing these crazy shred things on YouTube, you can tell sometimes that they've actually recorded it, and then they can just take the time recording it, and then they just mime to it. Well, I never do that. You can tell as well, because there's always plenty of cock-ups. But when I did that solfeggietto, I must have played it about 15 times. Sometimes I'd only get this far and go... And then I'd mess it up. I'd go, got to start again. Oh. I did it like that. And then I'd get on a roll, and about 2/3 of the way through it, I'm thinking, do not cut this up. Because I just knew I'd have to start again, and because the camera's on. I'd played it loads of times in that day leading up to it. I'd played it perfectly every time I knew it. But put the camera on, everything starts to go wrong. I find it easier playing live, way easier. I don't get nerves and things for doing it. I don't get nerves playing in here, do I? But like on stage, I never really worry about messing things up or anything like that. I don't know why. I think it's just in the heat of battle, you get so used to making mistakes and doing this and doing that. I don't find them that bad. I might find solfeggiato a little bit nasty, but when it's recorded, you're gonna be watching it back. You're gonna see the mistakes. When you do things live, it's gone. If you make a mistake, it's gone. It's past. You don't have to worry about it anymore. But when you do it on camera, it's there forever. So if you're going to release it, so you've got to get it right. And that has been good for me in some ways. In some ways, it's actually made me a little bit more anally retentive with a lot of things. But anyway, right, I'll only be a few more minutes. I need to get back for the kids. Now, a talking bass cheat sheet. Clefs, chords, circular fifths. Big enough for a poster on the wall. That's not a bad idea. And I actually came up with an idea. I was spitballing ideas the other day. And one of them was to have a sight read, a music reading glossary that you can download. So that's kind of along the lines there. Like an idiot's guide. Not an idiot's guide. You're not idiots, but like, just like a basic glossary of terms and things that people can download for free, So yeah. Thanks, Tamas. I like seeing Megatron. I like seeing the name Megatron coming up all the time. I think you probably saw the other day I was talking about how I introduced my son, he's only 4, I introduced him to the original Transformers cartoon from the 80s. The one with the crazy music. Then we're Transformers, robots in disguise, Transformers, more than meets. Then it's like 11, 16 and God knows what else. It's crazy music. But he was sat there watching it on YouTube. I put that on. And he wanted to keep listening to the music. And it's pretty hard to sing because it's all messed up. And he was singing along to it. And he was getting all the rhythms right. I was like, man, he might be a musician after all. It's hard for me to catch you. It's 3:30 a.m. here, so I seldom get to see you. I would love to see your old videos. Yep, they're all there. Talkingbass.net. Right, like I said, I need to get going, so I'll just drop down to the bottom here. Move to Katy, you can get a new 1,400 square foot home for 240 grand there. I live in San Diego, same house will be 1.1 million. Yep, that's what I keep talking about. So last year I was, the year before last, the subject that the community that we kept talking about was about my potential move to America. I was going to be moving to Houston, so either the Woodlands or Katy. So I went out there, I met up with one of the guys from the community. He took me out, went for a meal, went driving around, and we were very close to moving, but then we didn't. So, but we are sort of thinking about it again, potentially. I mean, it's really nice where we actually live. I live on the Isle of Wight, but there's various reasons. It actually makes it easier for doing this, to be honest, because then the timing's a bit better. On a C13, is it necessary to play the extensions 9th, 11th, and 13th? Is that a priority, for example, in a jazz tune? In a bass line, no. The only things you need to think about are C7, but because that's the core chord. You can put the other ones in if you want. Even in the chord itself, when the pianist is playing it, there will be a very specific voicing they'll probably have in mind for the C13. They might not use the root, they might not even have the C, well, they will in the bottom hand, but in the top voicing, they generally get rid of certain notes to make the voicing correct or to sound a certain way. The chord in terms of its construction would be, like there, a C13. So it's going to be C, G, B flat for the C7, and then you're going to have the D, the F, and the A for the 9th, 11th, and 13th. But most of the time, you don't even have to think about the 9th and the 11th. You just put the 13th in. Yes, from a tertian harmony stacking thirds perspective, it would be 1st, 3rd, 5th, 7th, 9th, 11th, 13th, but that's impractical most of the time and just doesn't sound good. If you just played that, it'd be like, bang! It's every note of the C Mixolydian scale all at the same time. Like, jong! Yeah, you'd probably miss out the 5th. You can miss out the 5th. You can miss out 9th and the 11th. You could play that as just C, E, B flat, and A. You know, E, B flat, and A on the top hand, and that would be a C13. But in terms of a bass line, all C13 is basically saying is it's a C dominant chord. That would work over a C13. The only type thing you've got to bear in mind sometimes is if there's like some altered extensions in there, flat nines and things, and then if you're playing a normal ninth, you know, on a scale working up, you've got to alter it to a flat nine, or whatever the altered extension is. Jules, I'm working through the new Creative Bassist course, and I think it's brilliant, such high quality. Thank you very much. I just saw a Circle of Fifths guitar tool that reminded me of Stargate. Do you have a Talking Bass branded such item? No, I'm going to check that out. That sounds good. Thanks, Mr. Bean. Okay. Right down at... the Milgram Experiment is a good name. Oh, the Dunning-Kruger effect. Yes! That is a good name. I'll tell you what we were going to do. Because me and my mate that's doing this, the sort of principal songwriter, we've known each other since we were kids, since I were about 3. And he's a really, really, really good songwriter. And we're both 50 this year. So we're going out on a road trip. We're going to go watch the World Snooker final at the Crucible Theatre in Sheffield for the first time ever. We're both big snooker fans, and so we're going to go do that. But we're going to have a road trip before. And me and him, when we were kids, back in the early 80s, we were really obsessed with a TV series called Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious World. So the writer Arthur C. Clarke, he had a thing on here in the UK that was all, you know, talked about ghosts and, well, not ghosts in that one, was like UFOs, Bigfoot, all that kind of stuff. And we were madly into like all the paranormal and stuff. And, you know, we could sit there talking about that forever. So we used to be mad on that. And it's become a thing where we can quote all these crazy things from the Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious World, because it was quite funny. It was very of its time. So there's a lot of characters on that series. You can look it up on YouTube. Just look at some of the characters on it. Some of the things that they say are just hilarious. So we've got... it doesn't matter what the situation, we've always got a quote from Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious World that'll fit. So we decided to go on a bit of a road trip. Basically a piss-up. We're just going to go around the country visiting places that they highlighted in that series. I know that just sounds like a totally geeky thing, but I wanted to do something for my 50th, and then we're going to finish it off with at the Crucible for the snooker final. Well, not the final. I couldn't get tickets for that, but we're going to go watch that. So, but the reason I mention it is because coming up with band names and things and album names, all we were doing is working through characters from Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious World, and like things like famous UFO site, you know, encounters like Kelly Hopkinsville and things like that, and McMinnville, things like that. But yeah, none of them stuck. Cheap labour. Yeah, that's a good one. What's your favourite Steely Dan song? Probably Reeling in the Years. Got any nice pedals? Is that to me? I've got a lot of pedals down here. I'll do one on pedals next time. Did you watch the Rick Beato interview with Skunk Baxter? No, I didn't. The one with Leland Sklar was great. What you mean the one that we did at Talking Bass? Yeah, we did Leland Sklar, and that was really cool how that happened, the Leland Sklar one, because there was somebody that was watching his during COVID. They were in the comment section when he started doing his videos every week, and somebody started talking about Talking Bass and saying, "Oh, you ought to go on Talking Bass," and then he made the move and actually said, "Yeah, do it," and so told me to get in touch. So we got in touch that night. I said, "Do you want to do it? Do you want to do it tomorrow?" He said, "Yep." And then we just did it the next day. I've got to say, I was quite nervous for that one because it was so quick organising it. I was like, "Oh man, Lee Sklar wants to do an interview." Okay, next. It was like the next day I got to do all the prep for it, and it was brilliant. He's such a nice guy. Please do a lesson in performing on stage and not looking down and engage with the audience and such. I tell you what, learning to read really helped with that. I know that I always come back to learning to read, but if you're able to look at written music all the time without, looking at the bass, well, that really helps. I actually saw someone that's done the reading course at Talking Bass mention that, saying that they've actually got so much better at being able to look around. But to be honest, I was more into looking around anyway. I mean, some people find it quite intimidating being on stage. But I never really did right when I started. I think maybe the first 2 gigs I ever did, which should have been 1990, something like that. I remember those 2 being a bit nerve-wracking. But then I just started gigging so much that I didn't care after that. I'm not the kind of person that ever gets stage fright. And I was quite confident in me playing. I suppose you could say arrogant, really, from that, because really I didn't know what I didn't know, A bit of Dunning-Kruger syndrome going on there. But I just felt quite comfortable being on stage. And, in the years since, I've been bleeding tens of thousands of sets or whatever on, how many, hundreds of thousands of hours on stage and that. And it's just what it is, isn't it? You just... you get so used to it and have to... The other thing that helped was actually running my own band. I was a musical director on a residential gig, and also on I went back to do the cruise lines as a MD for that. And when I did, I found running a band really, really helped me with awareness of what's going around, because often I might be looking at the crowd, but I wasn't really paying attention to everybody on stage and everything out in the crowd and the music and everything all at the same time. And when you run a band, you have to be totally on it with everything. You have to be, at times I might be running the sound, I might be doing, I might have a desk next to me where I've got to do that. I might be running click tracks for things if there's a show. Blah, 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 blah. So there's all these things, and then somebody might come up to you, especially if you're doing a cruise gig. You got security coming in telling you that to turn down because there's people trying to sleep upstairs. Things like that. You get somebody, a cruise director, coming in and going, bah, 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 just moaning at you. You're trying to have a conversation while you're trying to run a band set. It's I found that really, really useful as well. But that's not the kind of thing you can do a lesson on. Do you know what I mean? Mr. Evo's given me some ideas for getting back into my chess. Cool. I will do that. Beginner to Expert in 40 Lessons by Alexander Kostyev. Cool. How often do you stream like this? Well, I used to stream like this every single week, but I've just started again, partly because I've been doing that creative bassist thing for the past 6 months. It's killed me, honestly. I've put on so much weight as well doing it. I've been drinking so much because of it. Because it's so big and so long to do it. So if anybody wants to take sympathy on me and actually buy it just because of that'd be nice. It's been so hard doing it. It's a big one. And I changed the where I record. I did so much different on it, and it's 4K now, and I've done a lot more in terms of the graphics and things, so there was a lot more to organise. It'd help if, I mean, I have actually just employed somebody to start doing some video editing, because I generally just do it all myself, but it's getting out of hand now. It's just, there's too much to deal with, so, and you know, it takes me, and that's why it takes me so long to do these courses. Thanks for dropping in the Kelly Hopkinsville encounter. Do you still train in BJJ? No. No, I wasn't able to do it that long. There was actually a BJJ gym next door to where I was recording, you know, my old studio. But I screwed my neck up. It was I think it was a guillotine. It was either a guillotine choke or a Darce choke. I got my neck just got like totally. I was fighting against the, you know, I shouldn't have actually done what I did. I was trying to pull up rather than actually rotate round, and it's just it did my neck, and yeah, I was in agony for ages, for about 6 months, and I just never got back into doing it after that. Right, I'm going to go right down to the bottom, and then I'm going to get moving, because I know that my missus is out tonight, and I know we've got somebody going around just to take care of the kids, but I need to put our littlest one to bed, and he's going to be waiting up, so I better get moving. There's a course on sight reading and talking in bass. That is correct. Right, let me go right down. Does the Talking Bass app still exist? No, it doesn't. It's it'll take me ages to go through it. But I sent out emails, loads of them, and I used to talk about it in the live streams. There was a lot of, basically Apple and Google, they kind of pulled it because I wouldn't. I won't bore you with it right now, but there was a hoopla about actually having people use the courses they've bought on other platforms. So if you bought the course on the website, they didn't like you using it on the app. They basically want you to buy the courses in the app. And so there's a massive load of stuff that goes along with that. And in the end, we just ended up having to pull it. So that was about 2 years ago now, but it's still there. If you've got it, it'll still work, but you won't see any of the courses in there because they've still not. Eventually, those ones that people have got will just stop working because they won't be compatible with the latest operating system updates. Thanks a lot from Dofuzi. I don't know how to say that. Thanks very much. Oh man. Oh, we've still got over 100 people in. That's good. Love that you're doing live hangs. That was such short notice, though. Just happened in now. Yep. I will do for all the ones in future. I'll release a thing the day before. I only did it today because I'd not done a Friday video. Okay, right. I'll leave it there. So once again, just before I go, so we've just if you go back through this lesson, it'll be there still on YouTube. You can watch it, the whole lesson. So I talked about developing bass lines and riffs based on intervals. So we looked at rhythm and intervals. Intervals being the building blocks of music. If you're gonna learn anything in terms of nuts and bolts of music, or theory and all that kind of stuff, learn your intervals. But like I showed, you don't have to get into the terminology. You just have to learn what they sound like, and start applying them. And all of that is covered in the Creative Bassist course. So it's on the site right now. The sale finishes tomorrow. So if you want to get that with a discount, then get it before the end of tomorrow. And it covers building of bass lines, riffs, fills, everything creative that you can do on the bass. The second volume that's going to be released in about 2 months' time is which you can pre-order with the first volume. That'll be melodic playing and solo improvisation. So I talk about everything that you can possibly imagine to do with creative bass playing. So that's there, and I think that's everything. So nice to see everybody again. I'll probably be back sometime next week. I won't do the Friday because that's usually when I do the Friday video, so it might be on the Saturday. So we'll see. But I'd like to start doing these more and more and more because I like the crack. So thanks for coming, and I will see you all later. See you.